The Department of Public Health and Human Services is pleased to bring you Aging Horizons. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, fraud, legal issues, veterans benefits, and caregiving. Aging Horizons is a program dedicated to inform and prepare Montanans on these timely issues, making a difference to you and your loved ones. Here now is today's program host.
Hi folks, today on Aging Horizons we have a really special show for you. We're going to be talking with Paul Greenwood, and Paul is a former Deputy District Attorney out of San Diego. He's been working with elder abuse from homicide all the way to exploitation and financial abuse for over 22 years. We have a lot to tell you about. Please stay with us.
This is Bill. He just received his new Medicare card and is following some simple rules to protect himself from fraud. He knows to never give out his Medicare, Social Security, or bank number over the phone. And this is Nancy. She knows that to detect any problems, she always reads her Medicare summary notice or Medicare Advantage EOB to make sure the billing is correct. Both Bill and Nancy know that anything suspicious can be reported to Montana SMP at 1-800-551-3191.
Summer in Montana is a great time to visit your local farmer's market. Enjoy the social atmosphere while shopping for a wide variety of fresh, locally grown produce. Together with both WIC and Senior Farmers Market nutrition programs, you help feed your family 5 or more daily servings of fruits and vegetables for better health. You also help local ag producers and enhance the state's economy. So, for summer fun that's nutritious and helps Montana's economy, shop at your local farmer's market.
Is that Robert Knievel? Captain Lewis, Captain Clark, I'm officially Evel Knievel now. I'm getting my Montana Real ID.
Did you make an appointment at mtrealid.gov?
Yes, sir.
Smile.
I brought my non-laminated Social Security card, 2 documents proving my current residential address, and my certified birth certificate.
Approved.
Go to mtrealid.gov.
Now I can fly. It's that easy.
Providing long-term care for someone in need is a labor of love, but it is a labor. Time apart is healthy and necessary both for the caregiver and the person receiving care. It allows each a respite, time to relax and recharge. If you're a long-term caregiver, visit the new Lifespan Respite website. Financial assistance may be available. Respite for caregivers. It's okay to need it. It's okay to want it. It's okay to get it.
Hello everyone and welcome to Aging Horizons, brought to you by the Department of Public Health and Human Services. I'm your host, Kimmy Everman, and today we have, as I said, a very special guest with us, Paul Greenwood. And Paul, welcome. Good to have you.
Thank you, Kimmy. Good to be here.
Paul, you are the former Deputy District Attorney out of San Diego, which seems a little strange. Why would we be talking about that if we're talking about Montana?
Well, you know, Kimmy, I've been very fortunate in my career as a prosecutor. I was often asked to travel to other states to help try to energize different programs in their regions. We were fortunate in San Diego to develop, which I think was pretty effective, combating the rising crime of elder abuse. So when I left that office in 2018, I put myself out to be available. And thankfully, the state of Montana reached out to me. I traveled there several times before, so they knew about me. And for the last year, I've been working with Trevor Tangen and the folks at Adult Protective Services in Montana. Because, you know, Kimmy, elder abuse is the same wherever you live, right? Whether it's in Montana or San Diego, the same kind of dynamics apply. So I'm hoping that I can share some of the experiences that I learned in the courtroom over 22 years with the folks there in Montana.
Well, and let's talk a bit about those dynamics of elder abuse. Paul, what does that look like?
Well, that's part of the problem. Many of the dynamics are submerged. They're hidden because victims so often are silent. Sometimes they're silent because they're unaware that they're a victim. Maybe they are incapable of telling other people that they're a victim because of their own cognitive impairments. Sometimes the victims are embarrassed because the perpetrator is a loved one, a family member. And sometimes they're just too embarrassed because they've been scammed out of their life savings. And the last thing they want to do is admit that to close family, friends, or to people like Adult Protective Services because of a misconceived fear that by coming forward and portraying yourself as being a victim, that the, quote, government will come in and swoop you up and put you into a nursing home. So for those reasons, the dynamics sometimes lay beneath the surface. And that's why it is very important that we get more proactive, get out front, and share what we've learned with a wider community.
So what are some of the red flags that we should be looking for, Paul? Because I'm sure you know many, many, many red flags. What should we be paying attention to?
And this is very important. You know, adult children should be looking out on behalf of their aging parents. The biggest factor that I've seen over the years is isolation. And of course, we've been struggling with a pandemic where we're all being forced into social isolation at some point or other. And as a result, that means the predators out there can take full advantage. So, for example, if somebody is finding it difficult to get in touch with an older friend or a relative, maybe there's an interception by a person who's saying, no, today's not a good day to speak to him. Can you come back tomorrow? Or, you know, she's sleeping. Those are red flags. Another one, Kimmy, would be a change in appearance, a change in normal routines, where somebody is acting somewhat erratically or just not themselves. And I always tell people, go with your gut. If you think that something is not quite right, don't just let it stay in your gut. Say something to somebody. You know, we're always encouraging people to make that call to the Montana Adult Protective Services. Even if you're wrong, no harm, no foul. No one's going to blame you for being proactive, because if we don't make the call, then unfortunately, and I've seen this happen time and time again, bad things can really happen.
Yes, exactly, Paul, and I think it's what you said about the stigma, number one, of you're going to get taken away and put someplace because you're not bright enough or smart enough to not be scammed. And also, I also think that those red flags are easy to ignore, like especially when you want to believe that other person is really a good person. Say a family member.
Well, that's right. And it brings into play a lot of different family dynamics. It will probably bring to the surface the fact that most families have issues. Most families have some problems. And it's easier to just try to ignore it, hope it goes away. But in reality, these things don't go away. For example, if you've got a brother or a sister who is addicted to drugs, and they're living with your elderly mother, you know, the chances are that at some point that person struggling with their own drug addiction is going to take advantage of somebody's savings. They're going to steal the jewelry, pawn it at the local pawn shop in order to feed their own addiction. And if we try to walk away from that and ignore it, I'm afraid it does escalate to even worse problems. I can't tell you, Kimmy, the number of times that I received calls during my 22 years from concerned relatives now telling me what they had discovered. And at the end of the conversation, I would simply ask them, but where were you when all this was going on? Why is it only now that you've discovered it? So that's why it requires all of us, family members, neighbors, friends, to keep a lookout, particularly for people who are living alone and somewhat socially isolated.
Absolutely. Now, folks, we don't want to scare anybody, but we do want to make you aware. And there are those red flags. We're going to talk about a whole lot more that you can watch for, and make sure you keep your family and friends safe. Come on back.
Every 65 seconds, someone is affected with Alzheimer's or other dementias. Many become isolated at a time when help is most needed. If you or someone you love is affected, help is available, both for people with memory loss and their caregivers. Memory loss can feel frightening, but you are not alone. Call the free 24/7 Alzheimer's Association helpline, 800-272-3900, for guidance and support.
Elder abuse is a growing problem, and it's happening right here in our Montana communities. At least 1 in 10 older adults are victims of physical or emotional abuse, financial exploitation, or neglect. To get help or report elder abuse, call your local area agency on aging or Adult Protective Services at 1-844-277-9300.
Here in Montana, we love our outdoor activities. Unfortunately, few of them are risk-free. Indeed, Montana is second in the nation per capita in head injuries that can destroy the lives of people we love. That's why you should insist your family always wear protective helmets. But you can do even more. When you fill out your vehicle registration this year, circle the Y and donate $1 to support traumatic brain injury prevention and education. Now that's using the old noggin.
I was angry and upset when the doctor told me I have diabetes. I just didn't want to deal with it, the needles and the diet restrictions. But after I started to learn about it, those feelings changed. I was at risk for a heart attack caused by high blood sugar. That got my attention. I started watching my diet and making sure I got enough exercise every day. I want to be around for my grandkids, and now that I know what to do, it seems like a small price to pay.
Ask your doctor about diabetes education or visit montana211.org.
Hi folks, welcome back to Aging Horizons. We're here with Paul Greenwood today talking about adult protection, exploitation. Paul is got experience all the way from homicide all the way to financial exploitation, etc. for older folks. Paul, welcome back. Good to have you. We want to talk about some of those, you and I had talked a little bit about sort of the 10 biggest points that we need to pay attention to when we're trying to help a person that we think may be having exploitation or abuse going on. Can we talk about some of those?
Sure. Over the 22 years that I prosecuted these kinds of cases, I developed a list of tips that I feel could help possibly reduce the risk of somebody in your family becoming a victim. I always start off with one of the biggest decisions we'll ever make in our lives, which could affect us, is who do we bring in as a caregiver to take care of a loved one? And there are some do not do tips. Do not get somebody through Craigslist. Don't get somebody through a newspaper ad. Don't just rely upon personal recommendations from somebody else. Always, I say, go through a bonded, insured, licensed caregiver agency. But do your homework. Always interview the owners of that agency and demand to know what kind of background checks have you done on your employee? How can I be sure that the person that you want to send over to my home to take care of my loved one is screened and is not already with a criminal record? Because, Kimmy, the times I prosecuted caregivers who were working for agencies but who had criminal records, including one who was convicted of manslaughter. So there's so many preparation points before you hire a caregiver. Secondly, you need to always, if you are hiring a caregiver, let your parents' bank or credit union know of the change in circumstances. Now, they're not going to tell you anything about your parents' financial affairs, but write a letter to the branch manager and say, I want you to be aware that there's a change in circumstances. My mother now has a full-time caregiver coming into the home, and I want you to keep a special watch over her accounts. Again, caregivers, unfortunately, not all, some are wonderful, obviously, but there is a group of them who are there for one reason only, to steal from their client.
Right.
They'll steal the debit card, go to the ATM machine, they'll forge checks. And another tip that I have is always lock up the jewelry. Jewelry is the number one item that is stolen from older adults in Montana and San Diego, all over the country. And why is that? Because it's easily accessible to pawn shops, converted into cash. So these are just some of the tips that we can do without too much time involved. But I tell you what, it can save a lot of heartache later.
I love the bank, the letter to the bank. That's the first time anyone's ever mentioned that, and I think that's brilliant because obviously that is where they're going to go first, is to that debit card, is to try to get that cash if possible.
It is. I mean, for example, if the bank sees that a debit card was used at a casino, I mean, that tells you a whole lot. If they know their customer, their member, well, they'll know that maybe she or he is not mobile, doesn't typically frequent a casino, but suddenly their debit card is showing up in a casino, withdrawing $300 and then $200. That is a huge red flag. The other thing, Kimmy, is that unfortunately, a lot of older Montanans during the pandemic have been victimized through, for example, the romance scam. And obviously the ploy is to develop this emotional bond with the victim, and then the suspect will tell the victim that, well, I was going to meet with you, but a disaster has befallen me and I need you to send me money. Again, if there's money going out of the account, and I've seen up to $2.3 million with some victims, then that in itself should trigger alarm bells throughout the financial institution. So again, with a letter on file saying, keep an eye on my parents' bank account, then I think a son or a daughter, if they discover later that a lot of money has left, might have a good civil action against that financial institution if they turned a blind eye to the obvious.
Right, and you know, it isn't so much that we necessarily want to go around suing everybody, but we want people to be in the know. We want them to have that thought in the beginning of their mind. Yeah, this doesn't seem right. This doesn't seem like our customer.
That's right. And again, it's just a little preparation in advance. It also means actually being willing to be more interested in your own parents' welfare. I know there's sometimes a difficult balance between giving your parents their own privacy, respecting their right to be independent and not share information. But at the same time, we shouldn't just withdraw ourselves from our duty, which I believe we have. You know, when my late mother was alive, she died at age 96. I made a commitment to my mother to FaceTime with her every single day. And I was able to do that for about 8 years. Before I went to work, I would always FaceTime with her. And I think if more and more adult children took that responsibility to stay in touch where they're allowed to, that will decrease the number of incidents of potential abuse.
Absolutely. Folks, you know, we talked about isolation, we've talked about stigma. These are all fear. These are all things that keep us from reporting. We have a lot more to tell you, so come on back.
I was outside working on some equipment, nothing too strenuous. I started sweating and feeling out of breath.
When he felt pressure in his chest and aching in his arms, I knew we had to call 911.
First responders were there before we knew it. 38 minutes later, the doctors had restored the blood flow to my heart.
Now we know dialing 911 saved his life.
Your life is on the line.
This message sponsored by Mission Lifeline Montana.
I take care of my wife at home. When I found out training was available, I said, sign me up. It's made a huge difference.
When my husband was injured at work, it was life-altering. The class has taught me that it's okay to grieve, to ask for help, and to better cope as a caregiver.
My dad lives 4 hours away, and the Powerful Tools class has taught me that it's okay to ask for help. I highly recommend them.
To find out about this course for caregivers, go to powerfultoolsforcaregivers.org.
It's amazing the difference a little training can make.
Out here, we love our animals. From the wildlife
to the livestock. Inside, it's the same. They're just like family. We keep them happy and healthy, most of the time. Secondhand smoke puts pets at risk for cancer, feline lymphoma, vomiting, increases the risk of tumors and lung cancer, even causes eye and skin disease. Secondhand smoke puts your pet's life at risk.
Did you just text me?
I didn't want to disturb you if you were sleeping.
Sleeping? I'm sitting right next to you, silly.
There you are. Hey, I found a couple of Medicare helping programs online that I think we ought to look into.
It says if we qualify, we can get help paying for our prescription drugs. Oh, and there's a program that can help pay our Part B premium.
To learn more about extra help and Medicare savings programs, call your local SHIP counselor today.
Maybe I better text him.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Aging Horizons. We're here with Paul Greenwood today talking about elder abuse and the kinds of things that you can watch for to make sure that your friends and your relatives are not being taken advantage of. Paul, nice to have you here with us.
Thank you.
Now, one of the things that's important to know about making a call to APS or Adult Protective Services is how that process actually works and what you can expect if you make that call. Can you expand on that a bit, Paul?
Sure. You know, unfortunately, Adult Protective Services is often not known by the general public. They do a phenomenal, vital service out there every single day. If you suspect that somebody that you know is already a victim of some form of abuse, don't hesitate. You call the number, and in Montana, it's 844-277-9300. And I'll repeat that, 844-277-9300. Now, unless you are what is called a mandated reporter, and those will know who they are, you can remain anonymous. And the one thing that a caseworker will not do, they will never disclose, even if you give your name, they will never disclose to the alleged victim who called them. So your identity will remain confidential with Adult Protective Services. What their duty is to go out and try to evaluate the allegation and try to determine whether or not it is what we call founded. And if Adult Protective Services believes there is evidence of potential abuse, then they will do a cross report to local law enforcement in Montana. And this is another area, Kimmy, where I've been brought in by Adult Protective Services, is to try to help law enforcement in Montana improve their response to any reports of elder abuse. Because through no fault of their own, many law enforcement, and many of them are very young officers anyway, have had no dealings with it. And there's certain misconceptions that law enforcement can fall into, which we are trying to help them avoid. For example, they may say, well, the suspect, it's a romance scam. Oh, the suspect is probably overseas. There's nothing we can do. We won't even take a report. No, we don't want that to be the response of law enforcement. We need reports. One of the reasons we need reports is we need to provide data to our local, state, and federal governments as to the extent of this problem involving victims online with romance scams, the grandma scam, the IRS scam. So another misconception is when law enforcement will say to a person, well, you know what, this is just a civil matter. And so I've been constantly trying to encourage law enforcement, don't say that. Let trained prosecutors determine whether it's a civil matter or a crime. Now, one of the complaints I hear back from people is that, well, Mr. Greenwood, I did call Adult Protective Services, but I didn't hear anything back from them.
Right.
Well, you have to understand, APS work with a strict degree of confidentiality, and they're not at liberty to share certain information. So I know it's frustrating, but please rest assured that APS are doing what they can. And again, with the leadership of someone like Trevor Tangen and others at APS, we're hoping to create a closer knit community of professionals that will be able to discuss these cases and be able to make sure that they don't fall between the cracks.
Right. Now, Paul, just I guess as we're finishing up here today, because this is such a serious topic, let's talk just a little bit more about the police involvement. Now, we absolutely want to make sure that we have a report filed, obviously, because we need to have that paper trail if something gets worse in the future. So we want to have that paper trail. What other things can the police do, or should we ask of police in this arena?
Great question. And one of the things is by providing them with more training. There's a tremendous resource out there that I'm very proud of, which we're promoting in Montana. It's called EAGLE. And it stands for the acronym of EAGLE, E-A-G-L-E, is Elder Abuse Guide for Law Enforcement. It's online, it's free, and it provides checklists for law enforcement to follow when they are actually interviewing older adults, or they're trying to collect evidence or take photographs. So it's a phenomenal resource. And one of the barriers that I've tried to break through is where law enforcement will say, well, there's no point, Greenwood, in bringing you this case because the victim is 95. And I say, well, hold on. Why do you say that? Well, 95, they're not going to be very reliable in the courtroom. Unfortunately, Kimmy, ageism creeps into the way we view these cases. And I can tell you from personal experience of many, many cases, even if they're 95, 105, it doesn't matter. These victims make phenomenal witnesses in the courtroom, and jurors absolutely adore my victims. So that's one way that we can encourage police not to fall into that trap, but to bring the case over to the county prosecutor's office in the hope that we can hold perpetrators accountable. If there's one final message I just want to give, as you have said rightly, we're not trying to create a downer on anybody. We want just people to be more aware, more vigilant, be more proactive, be more responsible, call in Adult Protective Services when your gut tells you something is wrong. And together, I believe we can make Montana a safer place for older adults to live.
Absolutely, and so great to have you working with our APS folks here in Montana, Paul, and thank you so much for being with us today. We've really appreciated your insight and your good history with all of this. And folks, remember, we don't want to make trouble for anybody. We just want to make sure people are safe. For Aging Horizons, I'm Kimmy Everman, and thanks for joining us.
Special thanks to the Department of Public Health and Human Services for their continued support. Hosts on Aging Horizons are program specialists at the Montana Office on Aging. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions. For more information about Aging Horizons, call the Department of Public Health and Human Services toll-free at 800-332-2272.